So I'd like to give a quick shout out to Vivian Azer and Cowan. Bruce and I met at a Cowan event. So we were talking about BBM. Yeah, without Cowan, we wouldn't have met. And then, yeah, it's you guys know who he is, but let's do one more round of applause because I am amazed that this is happening right now. So, cool. Can everyone here see all the things? Are we good? Marvin, are we good? Cool. Okay. So, do you want to introduce yourself for anyone who may not know the full story of Bruce Linton?
That's a long story because I'm kind of old. No, I think today's every day is a really interesting and weird and good day in our space. So today, I got to be at the New York Stock Exchange, and that's because they let us be listed on it, which was not their first answer when we asked. And I confirmed today that we're still not allowed to be photographed with the bell or to touch the bell because, we're that kind of company. But as the day went on, a bunch of media, and I ended up, before going to Bloomberg, at Merrill Lynch Bank of America. And last week, they, for the first time ever, issued coverage on cannabis. That's pretty unbelievable. And now they're helping raise money for cannabis companies. We don't need any right now, but they're helping others. And their sales desk is actually trying to figure out how do they convince large institutional investors to be more supportive of the sector. I did not picture that outcome like a year ago. So I'm here because Josh is extremely convincing, and to cancel on Josh would be like kind of killing a puppy or something, right? Like it just couldn't do it. But I hope we can have a good conversation because I cheer for entrepreneurs and I cheer for change. And I think that where we are is really close to even more exciting. And it's not just North America, US, Canada. People should go and check out what's going on in like Poland or England or Colombia or Australia or Malaysia or Thailand. Like everywhere this is happening, and it's easy to miss it because it's happening so frequently. But like I think next week we're hosting like Thai officials who want to actually be in the cannabis production business, and they want to make it so it's part of their, I'll call it medical platform, but also tourism. And Malaysia, as they try to work through going from capital fine, capital punishment, let's kill the person with cannabis, to let's make this a regulated product, that's not a small change, but it's happening.
That's very good to hear. I guess taking a step back, how did you even get involved in the cannabis industry?
So I'm kind of like a tech nerd. More of my time in New York has been about working with your big banks and how they don't lose data packets. And I can promise you not losing data packets is really hard. But if you lose data packets, suppose it was like a 1 that you lost and they were actually making an order to buy something and it didn't have the 1 there, you buy a lot less of whatever that order might have been if you're a big bank. And so if you're really good at not losing data packets, I started this business because I could see public policy was going to change. The police were driving it in Canada. We had a long time platform since 2001, but in 2012, it was clear they were going to try and make this a regulated product with a supply chain. And as I dug into it, what I found out it was actually not about growing cannabis or selling cannabis or pricing cannabis. It was about not losing cannabis. I thought, well, shit, if I cannot lose data packets, like it's got to be a lot easier to not lose a gram of cannabis than it is to not lose a data packet in a network you can't see. Turned out to be true. And so I started the business after one day's deep examination of the opportunity. I'd read an article in the morning that said the police chiefs of Canada hate the current laws, they can't enforce them, they're telling their membership don't enforce them. Okay. And we had at that time a very right-wing kind of Tea Party leader. I thought, well, that guy can't win again if the cops aren't happy. So he's going to make new rules to make the cops happy. And I spent an entire day, big investment, a lot of focus for somebody who's not super good at focus, figuring out what was going on. There were a bunch of websites with hearings. And so by the end of the day, I concluded they were going to make this regulated platform that treated it as way more dangerous than any narcotic, but it was going to be a platform. And I should start one. And so the first 4 people I asked, would you like to do that with me, all said it was the worst idea they'd ever heard, including my brother. I've told this before, but my brother is pretty hilarious. He says, you have a lot of ideas. Some of them are good. This is a very bad one. You're going to get killed by the bikers. And he said, but don't worry, Mom has 2 kids. And he said, so you shouldn't do it. And so every rational person I talked to said it was a horrible idea, which if you're an entrepreneur, you think, that's awesome. I'm going to have no competition. And so then after a while, I started thinking like, this might actually be a horrible idea, because trying to get money from people. So what happened in Canada is 2001, we had this court case. They won. You could grow cannabis if you could convince a doctor you were sick and a government official. And that went on for about 11 years, 12 years. And this new system came up, and they put out the rules, the regulations, on June 18th, 2013. And they were almost exactly what I thought the rules would say, except they had this one little caveat where you had to submit all your designs and drawings and everything. But you didn't get a license for passing the written test and having an awesome design and plan. No. That didn't count for anything. What you had to do is then go build it. And a government inspector with a clipboard would come by at some future date and give you a pass or fail. So essentially what you had to do is go raise money to say that there is no market, there are no customers, this has never happened on the planet before. Can I have like $15 million? Because I'm going to build this thing, and if we pass, it's going to be awesome because we're going to dominate. And if we fail, plan B is we're going to grow tomatoes, we're going to charge like $100 each for them, and we're for sure going to make all your money back. And you had to be a little bit lighthearted about it, because really what you had to get to the point was that the government wants change. Government can't have change unless they pick teams. Look at the competency of the team I have and look at the public policy. We're going to crush it. And a bunch of irrational people gave me a bunch of money at, in US dollars, 29 cents a share. Our stock is not 29 cents a share anymore, so they were handsomely rewarded for that. But it was the hardest, 3 million, then 5 million. And so over the last, it's a lot of fun, but like since 2013, I've done 16 rounds of finance and 30 acquisitions. And I've only used 3 CFOs up. I'm on my 4th one starting in about July. And you have to raise money. And so people get captivated about, I don't want to be diluted. I think that's the wrong thing to worry about. I didn't want to fail. And if when you're diluting yourself down by raising capital, you actually spend it in a fashion that generates more value so that the next one actually is at a higher raise price because you've created a better asset, that's good dilution. And so that's kind of how I got started. And really, our business in Canada is all about following rules. We've hosted, I think, 25 different country leaders. We've hosted a bunch of law enforcement people from this country. We're the only company, to my knowledge, that has the DEA approval to ship cannabis here, and have done so multiple times. But what we need to do is when we follow rules, then we create a path so that you can create a platform. And so what we've been really good at is saying, do you have a rule for this? If you don't, we have an idea for a rule. And away you go.
That's awesome.
It's a really long answer. If you give me like 2 questions, we're probably done.
I have 3 questions.
Oh.
Well,
Overtime.
You forced me to add a 3rd question with the news on Friday, but we'll save that for the end. New York. You guys are making a big play in New York. Do you want to share a little bit more about that?
So there's 2 parts of it. The first part was I think everybody was pretty excited about the regulatory platform that hemp could be grown and maybe turned into greater value than it was going to be previously, and it wasn't just a test project. So when that farm bill came through, we were really looking for jurisdictions that were trying to say they would use the provisions in there to create state-level regulatory platforms that were sensible. And what we really wanted was, I don't want to make a claim that CBD in this proportion will make you taller if it's not true. So that's like an FDA thing. But we do want to be able to label how many milligrams of CBD are in something, and you can determine if it makes you recover from a sports workout. And so we saw in New York State a platform where they were actually looking to do all the things we want, which is regulate something, monetize something, and educate. So they said, we'll step up and we will help license, and you can't make medical claims, but you can tell people there are 20 milligrams in this drink, and you decide if you want to buy it. And if you follow the rules, you get to call it CBD. If you don't follow the rules, you got to call it hemp oil. And so we worked with them, and then we did what we do everywhere. So like if you go to our facility that we started in Canada, or we started in Denmark, or that we started in Melbourne, Australia, or where we're starting in New York State, they're awful places. Like there's no tourism, nobody's hanging around, there's no jobs, they're derelict buildings, there's high unemployment, nobody's using the water, the electricity, or the natural gas, and it's the smartest place in the world to show up. Because first off, they actually want you there, which if it's a really good place, usually they see marijuana go away. Second is, if you get the building for almost nothing, then you can put all your money into what you're doing inside the building. So in New York State, we've found a site that's about 50 acres. It has a really honking huge building that's derelict. And then when we occupy it, we spend about $100 million inside making extraction platforms that would make it like a pharmaceutical extract. And you then create jobs because there's somebody here I told that I tell you about porta potties. It actually relates to something. I promise this will come back to being relevant. What we do is when we occupy a place, one of the first rules I made is I arrived at a derelict building and the porta potty, like if you're in the porta potty business, usually you're super proud of that business. Like you put your name on it, you put your address, you put your phone number, like it's my porta potty business, so I want to tell the world. And when I got there, the first porta potty at the first site was from like an hour and a half away from the building. And if you have a pen, unlike the one you had, Senator, like a small, just normal pen, you can actually close porta potties so people can't use them. And I closed it and said that unless they could confirm that that porta potty was from the closest geographic point to the building, no one was allowed to use the porta potty until they got one from there. And the reason was, I explained to the construction people, is that in 5 years, I hope to hire PhDs in that town. And the town was not a place where if you had any place in the world you could choose to live and work, you would choose. But if we got the porta potty locally, then the person who owned the porta potty company would actually have more income. They would probably spend it by going for more dinners in town. We might get more restaurants. And then people might start to actually come to the town and eat in those restaurants. And before you know it, the town starts to have a reason you'd stay at night because they might get a little theater going. And when I bring the PhD candidate in for an interview 5 years later, they'll go, what a cute little town. And it's all because where you got to go pee. And so what we find is that model works everywhere, and it works super well where they're disadvantaged. And like the southern tier is that. Central Denmark is that. East Germany is that. And so I think when we're cannabis entrepreneurs, we should think about every site should be perceived in your mind's eye as an island. And you're going to be on that island for 10 years. So if you're going to be on that island for 10 years, you don't cut the tree down and say, I think that was good for burning. You might hope that it grows fruit and you have something to eat. And so that's the culture that I've tried to get everybody to think about, because it could be called corporate social responsibility, but if you infuse it with an island perspective of 10 years out, you do everything that way. Like, we do not have a cafeteria at a single one of our buildings. We do not sell food. We could. We have like 800, 900 people who'd love to buy food. But the deal is, if you're hungry, bring a sandwich. If you want to buy something, order it from a restaurant. And if you're having a meeting, you have to rotate each of the restaurants in the town that get the business. You can't pick favorites. You know what happens? Everything goes up. Now, it might be easier to actually make a cafeteria, but usually they suck. You hate them. People complain about them. So it's actually just a short-term stupid thing to build a cafeteria anyhow.
Well, that leads nicely into my next question, which was about CSR. So, like, internal.
Do you have another question? I think I might have killed that one.
Well, I guess, is there anything that you do?
Because the porta potty story gets old really quickly if I tell it again. But
I do like the porta potty story.
It's a true story. You got, and I'm telling you, think about that. Like, everything we did, that little town everywhere, like the one in central Denmark, loves us. Why? There was an abandoned greenhouse with no jobs.
I definitely think that's huge. I guess more broadly, I've always wondered, like, what is the responsibility of not just, Canopy, but all the major players in the industry, and also the entrepreneurs? What is their corporate social responsibility in terms of diversity, inclusion, social equity, social justice? Like, what are the big companies doing, and what should they be doing more of?
I don't really know what anybody does but us, and some days I'm not 100% sure what we're doing. Because, like, you should come to work. You're in a sector where if you think you're arriving at work with knowledge of exactly what you need to do that day, I think you're misguided, right? You should drive to work every day wondering if what I worked on the prior day is relevant to today's activities. So on CSR and all this stuff, I was having a conversation. I track our share price. And the reason I track our share price is I keep track of how many people become millionaires as it goes up who've chosen to come to work for us. Because there's not a single person who works in our company from day one, the very first day, who did not get options for joining the company. And you want 100% alignment? I had a 10% option pool so that everybody's on the same page. The way a stock option works is I say, thank you for joining my company. I'm glad you're working here. I'd like to give you the right to buy some of it at today's price 1 year, 2 years, and 3 years into the future. And if the stock goes up, it's because we worked together and created more value than when you arrived. So it seems quite reasonable that you should have a chance to buy some of that. And if after 6 years it hasn't worked out, we're probably both doing the wrong thing and they disappear. And so everyone who works in every one of our companies should get options from day one. And I usually, if shareholders think about that, they would perceive it as dilution, meaning they effectively own less of the company when those shares get introduced. And a year and a half ago, I said, guys, we're growing so quickly, people can't get at these to access them. I need more of them. So usually 10% of your total company in the form of options is considered quite normal. I moved to 15%. And the shareholders massively said yes. And when you look at our financials, it looks like we're giving away the world because on a financial basis, we have to record hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars of value that we've transferred. But it's a no-brainer because if you want to have social justice, the person who makes $35,000 a year should be getting 2 times minimum their salary in stock options. And the person who makes $200,000 a year should be getting the same ratio, same multiple. And when you have that, guess what? We all pick up a bit of garbage if we see it. Everybody thinks about security and safety. You have alignment across everybody in the fabric. And I think that is probably the easiest way because that creates everybody's incentives. It gets everybody lifted up. It is, you should not, if you're the founder, if you look at financial statements and you see people who are saying, yeah, but I'm the founder or I'm the CEO or I'm this, they shouldn't get any for a while because they already have their founder equity. And things like, it's really wrong thing to say, but like, if you have your really high paid CFO who's 59 years old and has been doing a great job everywhere forever, options are about keeping you here for the future. Like, I'm not sure that person I want here for the future. So maybe you should almost give them 0. Like, you almost want to give everybody at the bottom end the most options because they have the longest future. And so I think people don't do enough of that. And it's because the stock markets tell us it's the wrong thing to do. Well, we're all in the marijuana business. That's also historically the wrong thing to do. So I wouldn't feel too bad about handing out a ton of equity.
So for full disclosure, I do own some Canopy growth shares. I actually purchased them after we met up last year, and you told me that comment about looking at the stock price as a proxy for wealth created of your employees, and that was really resonant. So definitely appreciate you sharing that again. I guess like the last question that I have before we maybe open it up to some Q&A if we have some time. So you've just done fairly timely the largest deal in the history of the industry on Friday. On Thursday. Okay, I didn't know when it
was a 4-day week. We had to kind of really work hard.
Got it. Okay, I didn't know when it became official. As I was saying, I was at the Benzinga event and everyone was buzzing about it, and we were like, is it rumor or is it confirmed? And so do you want to tell us a little bit about the Acreage deal?
So I'm from Canada. Canada's a good place to be from, but if your objective is to be in Canada all the time, that's a very bad plan. And so we're in 16 countries, and the reason we're there is, there are a lot more people in a lot of the other countries, and we really wanted to be present in the U.S., but we also wanted to exit prohibition gracefully and elegantly and completely. And so that meant I really needed to be able to actually have Bank of America give me a bank account. True story, they did. I really needed to be on the New York Stock Exchange, so when we turn up in Malaysia and try to get them off that idea of capital punishment, we don't talk about pot, we talk about we're on the New York Stock Exchange. Isn't that good? Aren't we good people? You must trust us. It helps get the job done. And so we wanted to be here, but we didn't want to get off the New York Stock Exchange. We didn't want to end up killing our Bank of America accounts. We didn't want to have the Toronto Stock Exchange get rid of us. We didn't want to have $5 billion of stock fall into the market because Constellation had to dilute and get out. And so with all those parameters, we designed a program that allowed us to pay the shareholders of any one of the companies in the U.S. An incentive option, essentially the right to buy their shares in the future, not at today's price, but in the same ratio as they are to our current stock. So then you'll get money as a shareholder of Acreage, and in the future, when there's a triggering event, and a triggering event means that it's no longer, we don't need it to be legal, we need it to be permissible. So permissible might mean that at the federal level, they simply say, whatever you're doing in your state is your business, and that's okay with us. That's terrific with us. And so when it's permissible, then we step into that. But between now and then, because I can't make any money from our inventions, we have like over 200 patents filed. We have 35 issued. We have patents that are like in clinical trials and all kinds of stuff. Like when you get to scale, if you run a 1.7 million square foot greenhouse, that's a really big greenhouse, by the way. Like when you walk in there, you can almost like see like the curvature of the earth inside the greenhouse. Like it's big.
Can you give some perspective on how big 1.7 million square feet is?
Well, it should produce about, just drop a zero and call that kilograms of cannabis.
Yes,
And then, and if you want to make kilograms to pounds, just multiply that by 2.2. So a huge amount of cannabis. And I actually wanted to have Snoop go in there and sing, and then use CGI to make it look like the plants were dancing. But then we realized that would mean leaving Snoop in the greenhouse, and then we wouldn't be in the greenhouse. And somebody pointed out that might have been the stupidest idea. But
it'd be worth it for the PR.
It would be good PR. So what we needed to be able to do is enter, and I can't make money, all that stuff we've learned on this big scale and these, I'll call them clinical studies, et cetera, so we can lend all of that knowledge and skill to Acreage. And they can use that expertise to then go and do a better job everywhere, which should make them even more capable of having a really important position in the market. So when that trigger event occurs, we come together as two really well-aligned, well-executing companies. And so part of the reason we like them, there's 2 or 3 other ones that are very good. But we like these guys because I can't review their budget. I can't say we like that plan. So what they have to have is a really good board and really good management so that they're actually not going to become a disaster because you took your eye off them because you had to. And so that structure is kind of one we had to invent. But, you know, we're all in the business of inventing solutions to problems that are presented to us. And if you invent them, then you advance.
Seems reasonable to me. Let's do a quick time check and see how we're doing.
I don't know if anybody has questions.
7:21. The question.
You told me you were going to be a heckler.
The question was from Kim, is Bruce single?
Yeah, well, you can live on an airplane with me if that's what you're talking about, because tonight I get to go to Toronto, tomorrow I get to go to Nova Scotia, the next day I go to New Brunswick, and then I get to go to Washington, D.C., because it appears that I might get to go to the press gallery dinner Saturday. The what?
Press Association.
I don't know what it is because I never thought I'd get invited. But so, yes.
So I think that means if you really...
all I do, I have one hobby and one life. It's work. I really... Like, I feel bad for people who don't get speeding tickets on the way to the office because they're excited to get there.
Do you reimburse them for their speeding tickets?
If you're not getting there because you're late, like, you should actually, like, I think when you're going to what you do, you should be so excited that you actually are kind of like speeding and your brain's starting to get excited. And that's kind of how I live. It's a finally, like... I just think that this is our biggest problem. Everybody in this room, we're all screwed. When this kind of gets to some kind of finish line, there's nothing else that's ever going to be as interesting to be in the rest of your life. And there's never going to be a story that when you're an old person, you tell they pay attention to except this one.
Amen to that. Round of applause for that. So true. I think that the answer to Kim's question was yes, and make sure that you're signed up for all the frequent flyer programs. Any other questions? Any other questions for Bruce? Oh, right there.
I'll repeat it if you yell it. Yeah. So I think we should all have a model in our mind.
Question was,
good point.
Do you have any concerns about downward pressure on price and how that impacts your business? And then lastly,
water.
Or secondly, CBD water.
Yeah.
Any plans?
I think we should all have a business model in our head. The one I use is a triangle. And on the base of the triangle, I have growing plants. So those are like really smart bioreactors that create ingredients. And we can call it smokable, but ultimately every question you just asked was about milligrams, not grams. So when you think about milligrams, that's a very different logic of that growing platform. And I don't care if you grow it in yeast or algae or plants, but that's the bottom. And in the middle, there's this extraction. So there's a guy here with a jar of extracted stuff.
I think that's Rick Weissman.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think everybody knows Rick. He's gigantic, and he has a huge jar of CBD, maybe. That commercial or industrial extraction is how you get all the ingredients out of the ingredient factory. And then the top of the triangle is like divided exactly in half. And one half of that little triangle is doing research, whether it's health and wellness or clinical trials, but it's science towards outcomes for medical purposes. And all that science informs what goes in the final triangle, which is how to have fun. And so your question, if the ingredient gets cheap, the problem is if you don't have something smart to do with it. The water in your bottle is relatively inexpensive, but people pay quite a lot for it depending on who's provided it and whether or not it has a positioning in a market and an expectation. And I think with CBD, the big opportunity is, so if we make CBD water, how many milligrams should be in it? And if you're drinking it because you want to have a rapid recovery from a workout, should you consume it before, during, or after? You have to consume it for multiple days. So what people want to pay for are outcomes. And what you have to do is the science and the progression against the outcomes, so you put a brand on it. And if you don't think science and great technology drive brands, you mustn't use Google. Because Google is not a really awesome name, but we all use it because it was actually the best scientific technology platform to do what they said they were going to do. And now if I was going to ride in a car or have a contact lens put in to inform a medical device, I want it all from Google. Right? So I think it's going to be that kind of progression. And then what happens in our business models, you take that triangle, and in about 2.5 years, you rotate it upside down and you put it onto the bottom point, because that's where all the pressure, value, and money is. And if you don't have that bottom point, you're in two other businesses that are going to be really tough.
Any other questions? In the back.
In the Acreage deal, you have the option in 7 years. How long do you think it's going to take before cannabis is legal federally here in the U.S.?
So it's a 7-year term. It's actually 7.5-year term, and it's a right to buy them so that if it became federally permissible, we could do it. So we don't need it to be federally legal. I do not believe cannabis as a everywhere for everybody all the time mandate like alcohol is going to happen. I don't know when, if or ever. Medical could go there. And so what we prepared for was the ability of the federal government as a politician hoping to get reelected. So the best thing you should do is not alienate your elector. So you act, but you don't tell them what they have to do. You tell them that where they live governs what they get. And if you really don't like the laws of a state that disallows cannabis, then move to one that does. And so I think that outcome is short term. I don't think the next election will come and go without it being a major part of the discussion. I don't believe it will happen before, but I think that will be the driver to initiate that outcome.
Question right there. Question was, do you have any concerns about protectionism for international markets? And then secondly, what are your thoughts about Barbados and other Caribbean?
So protectionism is for sure a real thing, right? Because internationally, the United Nations govern this. The World Health Organization governs this. All contemplated actions and evolution there simply will make it still. Like we're the first company to ship to Germany from North America. Every time we ship to Germany, we have to have the German government ask us, can we have this much cannabis? Now, the reason they know to ask is our German 100% controlled subsidiary asked the government to ask. They send that to the Canadian government. The Canadian government says yes, and they send it down to us, and we get it and put it back through every time. And that model's designed so that someday they don't ask. And they simply get you to grow it in East Germany or maybe process it in there. And because of that, really, when you think about it, every time you import cannabis, you're exporting employment, especially if the government is paying for it. So if you have a socialized medicine platform, the government actually could pay 10 times, 100 times more than would grow costs be in, say, Colombia, so long as the cost of the cannabis they grow themselves creates more employment where they want it than if they didn't have that. Like, it almost goes unlimited. And so I think that that's a perfectly legitimate way to not get offside with WHO, UN, US, yet they have almost 5 million tourists a year. And so I think they will actually become a position of very large production to serve some of the other Caribbean, because places like Bermuda, they want to have cannabis. There's nowhere in Bermuda to grow cannabis. The average salary in Bermuda is ginormous. So I think Bermuda might be an importer, but I bet they'd prefer to import from the Caribbean crew.
Brenda? Question what? Question was, what do you think the next disruptive shift is going to be in the cannabis industry? Is it biosynthesis? Is it something else?
So go back to that triangle I described. I think that just disrupts potentially the ingredient. But like everybody in this room knows that if you grow a field crop called hemp and you get your CBD from there, it is almost impossible to make it less costly through some of these GMO, blah, blah, blah. So I think they could disrupt there. The biggest disruptor we all risk is really crappy public policy. Because if they don't start thinking about, like, I'm sorry, no one in this room actually needs a single serving drink with 100 milligrams of THC in it. That is not true. You do not need that. But that container exists in a bunch of the markets. And public policy that will cause people to have negative perception because they have a really negative event because they thought that was a single serving, that can be very disruptive to us because it doesn't take so long for the pendulum of public support to start to swing. And so, like, we have to self-regulate until regulators actually do that. At the top where it could be disruptive is on pharmaceutical products. I could see a time where cannabis doesn't stay in its swim lane. It doesn't stay by itself. Like, there's no reason alkaloids and cannabinoids can't start to become something together that make maybe anxiety mitigating pain medication so that you don't think about pain and start taking your dose sooner and sooner because of anxiety. So where that could get disrupted is we might find that there are blocking patents, right? There's a lot of can you play there kind of stuff when you start mixing things together, and Big Pharma has a lot of blocking capability. So I think that could be disruptive. As far as the party stuff, I don't know. I'm not feeling like that's as easily disrupted for a while. It's going to be back to regulation. You know, that 100 milligram can is probably our biggest enemy. Unless anyone here actually thinks they like and consume a 100 milligram beverage and then function super well.
There's probably a couple of people in here.
The guy with the giant jar, maybe.
Yeah. Back there. The question was, if we don't need the THC, what do we need?
So, well, no, 100 milligrams. So like when we make a beverage, if you use science and you actually think about how do I make a clear beverage? How do I make one which has no calories? How do you make one that you can tailor the flavor palette? And how do you make one that has a rapid enough onset that people can actually get a feedback loop and then have a choice on-ramp or off-ramp, more or none more? If you work at that for about 5 years, waste a ton of cannabis, you can make a beverage as a single serving with 2.5 milligrams. And so a 2.5 milligram outcome where you have optionality for more is a much more easily regulated, better public policy, and frankly, no headline kind of scenario. And so I think that's where we'll go. But what could be disruptive, I was sort of thinking about this other stuff. I don't think any of us in this room really have a clue about 70 of the other cannabinoids and exactly where do they go. You know, right now we always talk about 2 and only get paid for them. I don't know where the disruption ends on those, and I don't know what they could get blocked by, but I think the biggest open field is that.
Analysis of all the cannabinoids.
Well, and so that's maybe where your bioreactor actually makes the scarce one because we actually have a use for them, where right now, I explain, I think we give them away for free, and we have no idea why, and nobody knows what they want them for.
Robert.
accept the profit from the recreational legalization, where they already profited off the war on drugs for 40 years. I wonder if you could speak to the fact that the same shareholders of those same hedge funds are going to be taking money that's currently circulating around poor communities in the illicit market and extract it one purchase at a time out of those communities and filter to their shareholders.
The question was, given the context. Amen to that question, and let me know if I'm not restating it properly. Given the context of the war on drugs, what are your thoughts on the significance as to the LPs and investors in the large cannabis companies to profit off of legalization, given that they profiteered off of the war on drugs and locking people up unjustly? Is there some sort of necessary, I don't know what the word would be, necessary restorative equity or justice?
Yeah, I think there's social justice questions, and we had a bunch of conversations about them, but it goes back to the base level. Does everyone who works in this company have equity? Do you have bias against people with criminal records? Like, we do not. Where our money came from, I would say until June of last year, no major fund would give us a penny. So none. I had 15 rounds of finance where I couldn't get any name brand. I have 464,000. 464,000 is a lot of retail shareholders. In 1 year. So you get to the point where cash comes in. The way I looked at that cash was, without it, we couldn't actually create the next step, which was all these clinical trials. So with big money, there does come some hooks. It didn't come directly from the parties you named, but for sure, it's big corporate America. But the outcome is, if we do animal trials, we do clinical trials, and we open up businesses and say the Southern Tier, we open that business, there is $150 million spent in that local economy that was for sure not there. So I don't know if it's a sufficiently textured answer. Where we started off was, we actually said that when you come to work for us for an interview, the only reason you won't get a job is if you don't disclose your criminal record in the interview. So we've had a bunch of people with criminal records, but we want you truthfully interviewing. I don't know if that's the standard rule here, but it's a start.
Is that good? Great. We'll definitely be talking more about social equity a little bit later, but just want to make sure, great question, and definitely want to make sure that he answered you sufficiently. Let's do one more right there. Oh, great. Question is, given the power that you have, as the CEO of the largest company in the industry, from a political standpoint, like, what are your long-term visions?
So we actually have GR people working across the planet. And what they're trying to do is just start with a base set of policies that get government in the business of regulating. And what we mean by that is, do you have a way a person can become a patient? So like, if you're in this state, or sometimes like you think about the UK or Australia, a lot of these places it was impossible to become a patient. Then we say, do you have a supply chain where they can reasonably get it? Do you have a way that you can mitigate cost? Can we get to a drug identification number, or essentially an insurance coverage, so that people get a fee equivalent choice to opioids? So we're working through that side, and I would say all we keep pushing for is, please come see Exhibit A, rational policy, which allows people to become patients, get direct supply from the supplier, so no intermediaries. You're not dealing with, in Canada, pharmacies jacking the price in the middle. And we think that's a big public policy gain for the sector. Me personally, I'm putting more of my time and money to youth exchanges. And the reason is, I think that anyone under the age of 21 who interacts with people around the globe through a reciprocal exchange, learns about another culture, another language, another person. You're not there to actually change or build anything. You're simply there to experience. For the rest of your life, you're way more interested when you meet people. You actually want to know, like, what are you buying in the grocery line, because I might want to cook it. And you're willing to actually go to all kinds of events that you wouldn't normally go to because you're curious. And so personally, I'm sponsoring a lot more of that effort to be curious, and it's been something I've done for about 20 years because I just feel I wouldn't be in this business and I wouldn't have done anything if I didn't have access to it. And I think most people that I've ever met who've been on any kind of travel-based in country of not your origin come out of it for the rest of their life a person who actually can't help but want to know why. What's that about? And so that's kind of where I put my money.
Cool. Well, round of applause for Bruce Linton. Let's continue. For any of you who missed last month, we had the head of the Canadian Securities Exchange. We had Alan Brockstein, and of course, we had the CEO of stock ticker POT, Paul Chu from Weekend Unlimited. It was a great event. As always, you can go to our website, CannaGather.com, and check out the past videos completely for free. I encourage you to do that. As you know, if you have 3 friends, which, you know, not everyone does, I don't, but if you have 3 friends, you should bring them to CannaGather. What better place to spend a Tuesday night, third Tuesday of the month, than CannaGather? So quick shout out to some of the folks who did do that: Nancy Glassman, Susan Hotz, Vincent Pepe, John Gilstrap, Peggy Slendorn, Paul Chu, Nina Fern, and Jamie Ansorge. Round of applause for our host committee. In addition to a shout out, in addition to tickets, you also picked up a bottle of olive oil from Jenny's Baked at Home. This definitely, I say this every month, but definitely this month, as you can tell from the new venue and the scale, this event could not be done without the entire CannaGather team. Everyone on this screen really took it to the next level. As you can tell, this is just a different scale of event. So thank you to everyone on the team. Round of applause to everyone. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you so much. And if you haven't met them, meet them. So quick heads up, Kim organized an amazing after party, free appetizers, I believe, and discounted drinks and drink specials at John Doe, which is just around the corner. It's also Kim's birthday, so come celebrate with us. I don't think anyone got name tags, but if you did, then return them. And tickets are now available for $20, CannaGather.com/May 2019. We'll talk about that in a little bit. As you saw, we just had Bruce from Canopy. This is our 5-year anniversary, as mentioned. We got Gary Kaufman, my co-founder, right here, all the way from Colorado. Thank you, Gary. David was there that fateful night 5 years ago. It was a free event. It was second floor of a bar, very dimly lit. Couldn't hear anything, but it was still great. 30 people, and here we are. So, quick overview for those of you who weren't here last year. The 2019 CannaGather Awards. We have 4 different sections or categories, if you will. We have the operators. Those are companies that are 25 million in market cap or valuation and up. Entrepreneurs, 25 million and below. And then investors, no market size per se, but just people who are part of the capital markets in the industry. And then last but not least, in fact, probably most, we have the champions, those who are the driving forces of legalization, of equity, restorative justice. And as you may know from last year, we had a lifetime award winner. We don't have one this year. It's a very special award. But that award winner has been the champion of making drug policy make sense for, I don't know, 150 years or something, like forever. Ethan Nadelman, he was the Lifetime Achievement Award winner, and hopefully we can invite him to come up and say a few words if he's interested about the mission that continues. Thank you, Ethan.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Josh. And congratulations. I found the talk by Bruce absolutely fascinating, and I thought his answer to the question about social justice was part on, part missing. But I think I made this point perhaps last year, which is if you think about this historically, is never before in American history has a movement driven entirely by people who cared about personal freedom, social justice, good public policy, compassion, human rights, racial justice, resulted in the emergence of a legal industry worth tens and potentially hundreds of billions of dollars a year, right? I mean, if you look historically, you can look at the repeal of alcohol prohibition but that essentially re-legalized a market that had been legal only 15 years earlier. And you can think about the movements for gay rights and civil rights and women's rights, right, which caused major economic transformations, but they didn't create a whole new industry. But here you have something that began in some respects, the 70s, but really the 90s, with philanthropists and activists fighting about freedom, fighting for justice, with no thought about the money to be made legally down the road. And yet, here we have people making billions of dollars in a wonderful way. And I like some of the things he was saying about stock options and investing in impoverished communities and all of that. My hope is that given the unique origins of this industry, that it can somehow emerge as a role model for all industries, and especially emergency industries, and how to do things right. How to integrate in notions of corporate social responsibility, respect for the communities, respect for people who have been harmed, in a way that somehow gets integrated within the pursuit of profit and what it means to lead a meaningful life in the pursuit of profit, recognizing that the pursuit of profit is not all that is going to make us satisfied as human beings. That's my hope. That's my prayer. I'm grateful for Josh for organizing all of this and for seeing all of you. So good luck.
So we already gave away the award to Canopy Growth. Bruce, thank you for coming. Curaleaf, for some of you who may not know, CVS now can sell CBD products. Those CBD products are made by Curaleaf, which is one of the ROs here in New York State. Joe, the CEO, is unfortunately not in town to pick up the award. But Curaleaf, if you're not familiar with the CVS deal or who's making the products, that's a New York State RO. So kudos to them for that. And Joe, hopefully I'll see you again soon. Weekend Unlimited, we just mentioned him, and back for more is Paul Chu here. By any chance to come up and say a few words. There he is. Oh, hey. Paul Chu, congratulations.
Hi. Oh, thank you. Wow, wasn't expecting this. Wow. All right, well, thank you. Well, this is to all of us. This is not about me. This is not about Weekend. This is about us pursuing our happiness. And that's what I felt I was pursuing 2 years ago. And this is kind of the culmination of it. But it's just the beginning. So it is to freedom. It is to justice. It is to creativity. And it's also for the patients. It's also believing the plant. It's believing the people. So thank you. And I hope you will continue to be a part of this. And think about the weekend every single day.
I feel like most people do. Congratulations. Thank you for everything. We got a quick picture. We got Phil. Thanks. Acreage Holdings. Every year they just, on round 420, they just come up with something. Last year we had Murph come up and he just announced John Boehner as one of the people on board, his board. And then they just got acquired for over $3 billion. So kudos to them. I don't know, is Murph or Harris or George or anyone in town? I think Murph's actually in London right now. Well, kudos to them on getting acquired for a lot of money and being part of the Canopy family. Greenlane Holdings. For those of you who are unfamiliar, raise your hand if you've been to Higher Standards in Chelsea Market. So this is another Cowan connection. Vivian sent out an email, said, hey, doing a little get together with the Higher Standards people. And I said, you know what? I've never been there. I've heard a lot about it. I should go. Sure enough, the folks behind Higher Standards, absolutely, absolutely brilliant. They also are behind a company called Greenlane. Greenlane IPO'd last week. So very impressive, doing a lot of great work to normalize cannabis in, I think they said they get tens of thousands of folks to come in every day through Chelsea Market and through their store. So major congrats to some of the smartest people in the industry, Adam and Sasha from Greenlane, and also from Higher Standards. If you haven't seen it, check it out. And I think that rounds out our operators. So major congrats to all of you who are doing great things. Definitely couldn't do this without our sponsors. Major thank you to our sponsors. If you're interested in becoming one, email me. Let's chat. Cole Shots. Who's coming up from Cole Shots? Longtime partner of CannaGather. Who from Cole Shots? We got Rob. Okay, got Rob. Oh, we got Erica and Rob coming up. Thank you very much for your support and for dinner in Toronto. I did.
So I'm Erica Roman. This is my colleague, Rob. I'm the former practicing attorney. That's why I smile more. I might look a little more rested than him. And this is Rob. He is one of the co-chairs of our cannabis practice. It's amazing. First, I just want to give a big props to CannaGather and Josh. You got Bruce Linton here tonight. Like, that's pretty cool. I think everybody should give him a round of applause. So it's amazing, you know, I could get in front of you all, and I see you all the time, and I feel like we formed like a great community here. And I get up here, and I can do meditation and yoga, and all of a sudden I get up here, I'm like shaking, right? I get nervous. And it's pressure. It's a lot of pressure. Everything we do is a lot of pressure. Who feels pressure here 24/7? Raise your hand. Please, please be honest, right? There's tons of pressure. Who works a lot? Like more than 90% of your day, right? And then who here is super passionate about this industry, right? So we're in a really cool position right now, right? And that we could take the pressure and the stresses and what we all feel, and we're trying to figure, we're here for the same reason, because we're trying to figure it out. We're trying to figure out, like, how are we going to be a part of this? What's the mark we're making here? And as we're doing that, it's great because I think we're all loving what we're doing, right? And we're all pioneers of a sorts, even people who are operating on the West Coast in Canada, they're pioneers. And with that comes even more pressure. And I think what's really important is when you feel pressure, you surround yourself with people that can guide you, who will listen, who will support you, all those things, people that you genuinely trust. And I think that if I am ever to genuinely sell our services, it's that we want to be those people that guide you through this, who help relieve your pressure, to help you do it right. Because we all have, for the most part, a lot riding on this, right? And we're invested. We're invested. So it's so important that we all do this right, that we help in one another, that we come to things like this, we network, we reach out to one another, we communicate, we follow up, and we keep on doing it. Because at the end of the day, I think when we look back, and this is written about in textbooks, like, we're going to be pretty proud, and we're going to think this is a really cool time. There's going to be movies and books about this, you know? So let's do it. Let's do it right. If you're somebody who's serious about it, we would love to talk to you. That's all I have to say.
Sounds great. Thank you. Capolino, is Jesse here? Is Jesse here? Jesse's here somewhere. Maybe he's outside at the booth. Jesse? No? Okay. We'll get back to Jesse. Isodial. Marvin. Ready to come up? Sweet. Marvin Washington. Thank you, sir.
It's almost like following Babe Ruth, and then you follow one of the original people like Ethan Nadelman. But hey, you know, this is good to see Josh and see how this thing has grown and coming out here, because somebody said today that, you know, they're coming out with a beverage and there are competitors, but there are no competitors to me. I want everybody to succeed. We're all swimming in the same river, going the same way. The race hasn't started. we're a collective, we're a movement, but with some of the things that Bruce was saying, we're turning into an industry. My 80-year-old aunt in Colorado saw me on CBS News yesterday, so she doesn't think I'm a drug dealer anymore. But this is good. It's exciting, you know. I'm excited to get up every day and to be in this industry and doing the work that I'm doing. And this is almost exciting as, you know, being in the NFL, except I don't have to get my head banged around. So it seems like it's been a long time. I think this is maybe my third or fourth one, but it seems like it was eons ago, but it hasn't been that long ago. So everybody just keep pushing. We're going to keep pushing, and we're going to make this thing normal. We're going to make this thing the way that people medicate in the 21st century. In the 21st century, we've been going down that, particularly athletes, that opiate deal, but we're going to see some movement with, you know, the 4 major sports league, and I applaud the NHL because they've taken their hands off with it, and we're pushing, and we got a Maury Toomer back there, former Giant that's in the industry. So this thing is going to happen in the sports world, but it's happening, you know, in the real world. And so tell your neighbors, tell your friends about this, man, because only 10% of the country know the difference between THC or TLC, you know, or CBD. So, you know, we're here, and it's kind of like preaching to the choir. But when you go out into the Midwest and you go to different shows and ECRMs, people really don't know about it. So we have a responsibility to stick to the facts and let them follow the science. And my last thing is like, we're doing this, but remember, put people before profit. Put people before profit. And we'll be an industry, and I wish you guys all the luck in the world. Thank you. Thanks, Josh.
So as many of you know, it hasn't been an easy 5 years to get here. And I just want to give a special shout out to Marvin. During particularly difficult times, he's provided some amazing insight and support. So if you're looking for CBD or you're looking for words of wisdom and encouragement, Marvin's your guy. So thank you, Marvin. I want to give a special shout out. We talk about CSR, we talk about social justice. This venue is actually run by a 501c nonprofit, which is supporting folks who are dealing with homelessness, getting them off the street, rehabilitating them, and they do an incredible job. I was corresponding with them about one individual, and they were on it, speaking with that individual frequently. Plus, they have this amazing venue, and they put up with me for the last month. So I just want to give a major shout out to Breaking Ground, to Karen, who is hopefully here somewhere, but probably hiding because she didn't want to come on stage. But as we did last year with TPA, and sort of to the question that was asked before about how are companies doing CSR and giving back, in addition to the venue fees, we're going to donate $1,000 to Breaking Ground, and I encourage you to take a look at what they're up to and consider donating to them or the organization of your choice who's doing great work for people who need help. So, speaking of money, we have the Investor Awards, and we'd like to call up Tahira from MTech. Is Tahira around? Tahira around. She's still at Yale teaching. She will come back later. Hopefully we can grab her. Mitch Berukowitz from Merida Capital, who is here as well with the group. There he is. Mitch Berukowitz. Welcome back to the stage.
Wow, there's a lot of people here today. I guess when I spoke last time, there wasn't as many people, so you could just stand in one place and like literally talk to 10 people. But I'm going to make it very brief to just give you some context of how far the industry's come. In 2013, I was one of the original Connecticut licensees when there was 4 operators in the entire state, and we were the highest scoring team. And I remember going to Minnesota and working there for 3 months to win one of the 2 licenses there. Although Merida doesn't do any of that. We're more of an ancillary focused investor. But I remember being in Bar Taco in Stamford, Connecticut, having a party for winning this first license. And there was like 40 investors there, and everyone was really celebratory because no one knew what was going to happen over the next 6 months other than we were going to lose a lot of money building a facility that was going to serve patients who weren't even there yet. But we were ready to really give some wellness to Connecticut for the first time. And we started talking about how we would want to go to other states and we want to build this industry and build supply chain. And everyone was kind of like, what is he talking about? Except the bartender was like, woo! Right? He got it. And a lot of people in this room get that it has to be built brick by brick. People like Josh bringing people together so that you can meet potential investors, so that you can pitch your opportunity, your thoughts. And it doesn't really happen without a real community because it's the illegality, like Bruce said. And so for me, I just feel fortunate to be able to do what I do every day. To fund companies that I think this year will probably do an aggregate revenue close to $500 million. We'll build some of the supply chain, some of the rules, the compliance that literally helps this industry grow. So I'm really lucky. So thank you to everyone for caring, and thanks to Josh for the award.
Look forward to seeing the big announcement tomorrow. Let's take a quick picture. Tomorrow, big announcement? Tomorrow there's a big announcement. I look forward to checking it out. Gotham Green Partners, for many of you who saw, MedMen was in need of some money, and Jason Adler and the Gotham Green guys put in quite a bit of money into them that just closed the first tranche recently. Gotham Green is, or at least I guess was, a New York-based, now they're New York and LA-based investment fund, and they're doing some great stuff, as we talked about last year with their Kronos investment, which has done very well for anyone who came to the January 2017 event with the CEO of Kronos and made 8x their return since then. Gotham Green was the main backer of that, and now they are doing some interesting stuff with MedMen. So congrats, kudos to Jason and the whole team, Daniel et al. Northern Swan, do we have Mr. Kyle Detweiler in the room, perhaps? Do we have Kyle? Do we have Dell? Do we have Dell in the room? Outside, I guess. But they are a New York City-based company, one of the largest in the industry, if not the biggest in the industry, based in New York. Kyle is an investor extraordinaire. Dell and the rest of his team are absolutely top-notch. Definitely get to know them if you can. Laura Hippo, Andrea couldn't be here tonight because she has a small human, but hi, Andrea. And if any of you are in the tech world, you know Ken Lehrer and Ben Lehrer and Eric Hippo, some of the leaders in the New York City tech scene. Their venture fund is very active in the cannabis industry, and one of the few who are mainstream venture capital firms who are investing in the cannabis industry, partially because of vice clauses in LP agreements, but also because many just don't want to take the risk for other reasons. So hats off to Andrea, who's leading the charge at Lehrer Hippo. And for Lehrer Hippo for being awesome. And for Joe Medved, who invested in my last company. Sorry that didn't work out, but I love you anyway. So before we get to Kim, I'd like to call up one award winner who needs to duck out a little bit early. You got it? So this is for Mary Pryor. I'd like to invite Mary Pryor up to the stage. Round of applause. So education, we talk about education. Education is incredibly important, and there's no one better doing more for inclusivity and education around the state and beyond than Mary Pryor. So Mary, thank you for coming, and thank you for all that you do.
Hi. So I'm going to ask the people that actually really know me, that actually also do this work, to stand up. I don't want to call you out. You should know who you are. Thanks, Solange. So first of all, this industry, the people that are standing up that actually know me, this is what the industry looks like in New York State. It's inclusive. It's mostly led by women, and we're the fucking shit, right? And so I just want to make sure I'm saying this so that there's recognition, right? When you have women like Humble Bloom, when you have people like Presto Doctor, when you have different people that are in this room that work tirelessly to not only provide education, but also find a way to make a means and also drive things like Equity Day One and to give you this programming, understand it's more so a labor of love. And I'm really, really grateful for this because I think it's important to note a couple of things. One, New York needs to reflect real New York. So for everyone who's here, who's new, who's really looking at this space, the diversity of this room needs to be reflected in anything and everything that is cannabis related. Second to that, equity has to be a day one item that not just I fight for as a Black individual, but something Kim fights for and something everyone fights for. It makes the industry better. It makes everyone happy. And if you're a capitalist, it helps you make money. And as someone who comes from a background of agency and tech, I'm 37 years old. This is the 4th industry I've been in and my 5th self-started business. So let's be clear. This works. Inclusivity works. CSRs matter. Equity Day One matters. And I'm just making it very, very plain that this industry needs to be inclusive and we need to be able to follow and support the work of those that mean it authentically through and through. Thank you.
Can be.
Hey guys, what's up? What an amazing crew in here tonight. There are so many amazing, influential people in the room, so make sure that you network away. Of course, shout out to Marvin Washington. Joy Beckerman told me 2 years ago, she said, Kimby, cannabis is definitely a billion-dollar industry, but hemp, sis, is a $1 trillion industry. So I love that. There are so many other amazing women in the room. Shout out to Colshot's Erica, who comes up and does yoga and meditation in her mind while she public speaks. It's scary to get up here. Women Grow in the house. Humble Bloom, what's up, sisters over there? If you guys don't follow them on Instagram, they do some really amazing stuff here in the community. There are so many great people in here that have so many great platforms. So fucking Bruce Linton, and he's single? $3.4 billion, that's a lot of weed. Next husband on the radar. I was like, ladies, if you like men wearing khakis and navy blue suits with money, you found your next husband in here, okay? So you are not leaving single tonight. So shout out to Josh. 5 years, Gary. Can you believe it's 5 years? It's fucking crazy. We have been fighting for cannabis in this community for over 5 years. And I want to shout out Steve from Freedom Leaf, who has been tirelessly and effortlessly pushing the cannabis parade in New York City for 20 fucking years, okay? So Steve, thank you so much. We have the parade coming up, and CannaGather, of course, is a sponsor. So come and march with us. Come and march with us, and let's prove, not just to New York City, but the whole world, that we are here and we are here to stay. And of course, you know I am throwing the after party at SOB's here in New York City, the after party after the parade from 5 until 10 o'clock, and it is going to be lit, and there's going to be some amazing people in the room, including the team from CannaGather there. So put that on your calendar. We are all marching. Tanya, right? We're doing Women Grow March. There's got lots of organizations out there that are going to march. May 4th. May the 4th be with you, right? It's Star Wars Day, so like if you bring your sabers, it's totally cool. So again, thank you guys so much for coming out tonight. Again, the people that are winning the awards, they're amazing, but y'all are fucking amazing too. Right? Jenny baked at home. Did you guys try her oil? My boyfriend dropped the oil on the floor, and like I was like, that's my CBD oil. I would have to lick it off the floor now. He's like, you put it in the garbage. I was like, wasting CBD like that. It's like alcohol abuse. Anyway, so lots of good stuff happening in the news. Not just Bruce Linton. I mean, $3.4 billion. I mean, that's a lot of weed. He was saying like all these numbers. I was like, that's the man right there. Anyway, let's get down to the nitty gritty. Good evening, everyone. Gather round. Welcome to the wild world of weed. I'm your plug for news and events. This is Cannabis with Kim B. Getting on to the news. Harvest Health CEO Steve White recently said that Bruce Linton is always ahead of the curve. So there's no surprise that he's leading us into this new frontier of cannabis. But let's start about talking about New York and the cannabis legalization efforts. After much pushback over social justice and other equitable concerns, adult use efforts were largely shelved and left off the state's budget. Boo! We'd call this a shock, but if you've been on the L train anytime recently, you know. Hashtag pass a fair bill. In Jersey news, regulators believe that the state will need 200 million feet of space and an additional 100 cultivators if adult use is legalized. But with such a densely packed state, we might find ourselves smoking Jersey Devil Kush right out of the Pine Barrens. Hashtag, but off of what exit? And how about those 420 sales? Data from FlowHub and Headset found that the retail sales spiked in Colorado 120% on 420. Is that true, Gary? Was it a sick, insane thing on 420 in Colorado this year? I feel like it was. The jump was the highest for any legal market in US and shows that people really don't need motivation to get stoned on a weekend. But it sure does help. Hashtag Rocky Mountain High. Sorry, I can't sing. All right, so speaking of 420 and Denver, Carl's Jr. launched a CBD infused burger on 420 in the Denver market. The move is the latest in the fast food chain that has made over the years a stay edgy and attractive to customers. The news also shows people will slap CBD on anything. Hashtag, who wants to buy some of my CBD socks? Let's head to the desert and close out the month. Coachella weekend 2 happened over 420 and included legal pot sales. With the festival selling overpriced Kanye merch, we are sure that the $500 dime bags got tons of likes on the gram. And that's all I have for you guys tonight. Now, remember, we have the after party. It does not end here at John Doe right up the street. We are going to go party. We have free appetizers and drink specials. Come out and rub elbows with the team. Celebrate my birthday. I am turning 41 on Thursday. And you know why? Because I smoke copious amounts of cannabis every single day. And shout out to my business partner and my publicist who are here. We were just on Cheddar and I announced to 6.6 million people. I really do smoke copious amounts of marijuana every single day. Thanks, guys.
To be clear, Kim flies to California in the morning, and then she consumes, and then she flies back for CannaGather. Speaking of medicine, we would like to give a shout out to Marijuana Doctors for being a presenting sponsor tonight, and I'd like to call up Dr. Donner to share a little bit of insight about some of what we were talking about with Bruce about the cannabinoids and dosage. Is Dr. Donner available? Great. Thank you. Do you want to sit here and then just right arrow? So I mean, I think that there's sort of two main items on my list to cover, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts, how you'd like to pursue. If you want to give the intro and basically at a high level, you know, dosage and treatment, and then also the big news, which is the public hearing with the FDA. So however you want to go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So can everybody hear me okay? Yeah? Great. Hello? Yeah, better. Okay, so my name's Dr. Brian Donner. I'm the Chief Medical Officer and co-founder of Compassionate Certification Centers. We're a medical cannabis healthcare organization out of Pennsylvania, and I've been fortunate enough to speak on behalf of marijuana doctors who we've been clients of.
Can you guys hear him?
Better? Yeah?
Yeah.
Sorry. We've been clients of for the last few years, and we've developed a really ongoing relationship with them, and recently have entered into a joint venture to try to expand our network to medical cannabis patients really across the country. So that's my background and what I do.
Cool. So I believe that you're involved in some ongoing studies about dosage and treatment with CBD. I think that there's a lot of fanaticism about CBD, but not necessarily a lot of clarity as to how much one should take, testing, things along those lines. So I would love to get a sense from you and your studies. What are you finding from that from a therapeutic standpoint?
Absolutely. So basically over the last 2 years of clinical practice that we've had, what we have found is that each patient's really an individual, right? So whenever you talk about dosing, when you talk about frequency, when you talk about routes of administration, all of these things are individualized. So there's really no gold standard. There's nothing across the board. So what we have found is that whenever we evaluate our individual patients, regardless of the disease process, regardless of the symptomatology, we're really treating them as an individual. So when it comes to dosing, route of administration, frequency, all of those things are taken into account on an individual basis. With respect to research, one of the things that we noticed was that many of the medical organizations weren't conducting their own clinical research on these products. They weren't collecting data. They weren't doing anything to follow up on. And you could have the greatest product in the entire world, but without the data to support that and the efficacy, we really didn't see things progressing. So we started to do some of our own internal research. For example, right now we're studying CBD and irritable bowel syndrome. We're also about to start a study probably similar to lines of Canopy with post-concussion syndrome and CBD to really collect some definitive data that we can then use to better our patient treatment plans.
Great. And then could you tell us a little bit about, there's a public hearing going on, and this could be a watershed moment for both CBD and the cannabis industry more broadly. Could you share a little bit of insight into what we should either prepare for or expect from the FDA hearing?
Absolutely. So I think the fact that we're having a hearing like this to begin with, and it's public, and that we can go is really a step in the right direction. I would encourage everybody to really pay attention to what's being said at that hearing, because there's going to be some really major players talking there, and it could really help give some ideas with regard to policy and where we're going to be going into the future. I don't think, at least in medicine, I've seen anything like this in my career before, so I'm personally interested to take part of it and participate. But I think there's going to be a wealth of information there that most folks should really pay attention to.
Yeah, and for those of you who may not know, and it hasn't been broadly publicized, but it's going to be at the end of May in Maryland, and as discussed, it's pretty significant. So if you are interested in learning more, definitely reach out to me, Dr. Donner. Joy Beckerman, as mentioned, is in the house. She's the queen of hemp. And knows all the things. So definitely reach out. Obviously, we have Isodial as one of our sponsors, who's a leader in the CBD world. So a lot of people, if you're interested in getting a sense of where policy is moving towards, this is going to be a pretty significant moment. And High Falls extract as well, Rick.
Yeah, absolutely. And before I go to, I just want to, we talk about up here the adult use and recreational use. I really just want to emphasize the importance of medical use as well. I've been a practicing physician for over 10 years now. I can tell you, honest to God, from my heart, I have seen medical cannabis help more patients than any other therapy I've ever seen in my entire career. It's also doing that largely while not harming people. So as we go through this movement in recreational and adult use, I just ask everybody that we always keep in mind the patients and really where this movement came from, so that we can do a better job for them as time goes on.
In terms of your study of IBS and IBD, like what have you seen in terms of therapies and modalities as well that work for patients?
It's a great question, and I think one of the things that we've seen is the route of administration, or potentially combined routes of administration for patients, can really make all the difference in the world. So for example, maybe a patient doesn't respond very well to just an oral preparation on their own, but then all of a sudden, when that could potentially be augmented with an inhaled or a vaporized preparation, that may make all the difference in the world. One of the other things we're seeing in our studies is that we always focus on primary endpoints, right? Really, what is this study about? However, we're seeing some fascinating data in the secondary endpoints. So maybe the study, when we started off looking at irritable bowel syndrome, really what we found great data on was something else entirely different. So it's really appealing from a research standpoint.
Is there anything else that you'd like to share, or maybe we can open up to a question or two from the audience?
Yeah, I guess really one of the other things I want to share is that what we've seen over the last few years is we've come across a lot of patient treatment failures. And one of the reasons I think this happens is because of lack of education and lack of support. You can go down the road and buy CBD at the gas station now, right? But this isn't a shotgun approach for patients. And oftentimes with the appropriate medical guidance for folks who understand the science as well as the clinical medicine, it can make all the difference in the world. And we've had so many patients that have come to see us and they've been on the verge of stopping medical cannabis therapy. But with just a little bit of tweaking and a little bit of finesse and a little bit of time, it's made all the difference in the world. So I really want to and put that out to everybody that medical cannabis, the therapy, it's best often guided by somebody who knows and understands how this system works.
Makes sense. I think we got a question right there.
As a physician who's also doing studies in medical marijuana, I find a lot of trouble writing a proposal for anything that is a blinded study because the effects of THC are really hard to blind to patients and then obviously also to the people doing the study. So I'm kind of stuck in the observational studies only. My question is, how are you getting around that to find to do a higher level of evidence in a double-blinded or a blinded study, which we use as our gold standard in other fields of medicine? How are we as a providers going to get past that?
Question was, how do you get a higher level of evidence, particularly double-blind studies?
Absolutely. This is a great question. I'll tell you, this is something that we struggle with as well, and I think everybody does. And obviously, based off of the federal regulations, that's what makes things difficult. We can't do multi-state, randomized, double-blind, controlled studies, right? So what have we done with that? There's been many proof-of-concept studies, things like you're talking about. I think hemp-derived CBD, and now with the new Farm Bill, has really given us an opportunity to expand on that as well. What we have focused on in our organization, too, is some of the state-derived programs. So you look at Pennsylvania, they've tried to build a robust research program there that we can then work with some of the large academic institutions and universities as well. The good news about this, since I started this 4 or 5 years ago, it's much better now. Before, you couldn't even go to an IRB and get approval, right? Now at least we can get some of these things going.
Cool. So if you have any questions about CBD or medical cannabis in general, definitely reach out to Dr. Donner and our sponsors, Marijuana Doctors. So thank you, Dr. Donner, for everything.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you. Back to the need a mic. Back to the awards. Entrepreneurs, marijuana doctors. Speak of the devil. I know he doesn't like to talk, but this guy is very sharp, doing big things with one of the leading medical companies in the industry. And if you're not familiar with it, just Google medical cannabis, and I'm sure you'll get marijuana doctors as the top 5 results. Been doing it for 10 years or so, I'd say. 10 years. So thank you, Jason, for all that you do for the industry. Come Back Daily, founder, Stephen Fan. Round of applause for anyone who knows Stephen. Stephen actually came to the first CannaGather 5 years ago and now opened up a brick and mortar CBD shop. Excuse me, opened 2 brick and mortar CBD shops in Manhattan. Be sure to check him out. Enjoy your vacation in Hawaii, and thank you for 5 years of support. The Blink Group. We got Arnaud. If you don't know Arnaud, this is the only time you'll ever see him without a scarf. He is also a world-class expert in vaping technology. Let's get a quick picture. And I'll let him introduce himself and all the cool stuff he's up to.
Hi, guys. Thank you very much, Josh, for this award. I think it's our first award in the industry, so we're very proud of it. I'm also chairman of the ISO standards on vaping products and chairman of the European Commission on vaping products. So I think there's one message I'd like to pass on is we are selling as an industry a life-changing product to people. If we start selling it without respecting standards, without giving a rat's ass about what we're putting in people's lungs, I think we're doing a bad job of this. And what I see today in the cannabis industry really scares me. When you talk about emissions testing, no one cares. No one, even the big players, some that were here in the room today, do not care about emissions testing. They don't care what people are putting in their lungs. This is very, very important to us. You guys were talking about CSR recycling programs. Who else is asking about recycling programs? No one is. We've set up programs in Europe a couple of years back for recycling of batteries and cartridges. This is something we as an industry should all keep in mind and understand how to work together no matter if we're competing or not. Be ready for some pretty big announcements towards the middle and fall of this year at latest in terms of recycling programs. This is not something we're going to do for us. We're going to do it for the entire industry. So thank you again for this award. Thank you, everyone. And I'm sorry my partner Sasha couldn't be here, but there were some imperatives. Thank you very much, Josh.
Thank you. And congrats. When I say world class, he's literally like the world expert in vaping. So, and he's based here in New York. So be sure to grab him if you have any questions. Humble Bloom, Solange, she was sitting right, she just stepped out, but she got her award. Amazing entrepreneur, building great culture and culture around the plant. Thank you, Solange. Maybe you should, yeah, round of applause. Round of applause for Solange. And last but not least, my mom. I want to give my mom an award. So, not only did my mom design this jacket, because she's one of the best fashion designers in the world, but she's also our intern. My mom didn't support CannaGather for about 4 years. Thereafter, I'm not sure if she still does. But throughout that time, she would always ask me if I had everything that was ready for the event that night and ask me how it went. My mom encouraged me to trademark CannaGather, even though I was sort of bedridden, depressed for changing the name, which, as Marvin alluded to, was probably the best thing to happen to this company. And my mom was like, no, you have to trademark. This is going to be great. It's going to be amazing, even though she did not support cannabis. So, Mom, thank you for the jacket. Thank you for everything. Thank you for the support. Appreciate it. Thank you for calling Hudson Hemp. Is Hudson Hemp in the house? She reached out to Hudson Hemp because she saw them on TV, and they came here tonight. So thanks to Hudson Hemp for coming, and thank you, Mom, for everything. Do we have Kat from MGO to come up and share a little bit about the work that MGO does? I know they're a little short-staffed because one of them is out. MGO is one of the leading accounting firms in the industry. They also do like pretty much everything else on the advisory side, capital markets, things like that. But one of the leaders in accounting. So if you need any assistance from them and their team, Kat is definitely outside, or you can come to me. Wilson Elser. Who do we have from Wilson Elser?
We are attorneys with law firm of Wilson, Elser, Moskowitz, Edelman, and Dicker. It's a mouthful. It's not as short as MOM, and I don't like following MOM. We can't compete with that. We have a large practice, about 800 attorneys across 37 offices, and we have a well-versed cannabis team as well, which we're both members of. The co-chairs of the cannabis group started out in LA about 10 years ago. And over the past 2 years, 3 years, we've been migrating eastward as more and more states come online for adult use marijuana and medical marijuana. We share their experience with all of our clients, and in this highly scrutinized industry, I want to echo what Marvin said earlier, that we're kind of all in this together. The industry is being looked at under a very powerful microscope, and one mishap by anybody is a mishap for the industry as a whole. So we are here to help you legitimize your business and minimize your risk. We'll be at the after party, so I hope to speak with some people. I get very excited when I talk about cannabis. My wife's getting very annoyed with me, so please come by, say hello, and we could have a nice conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Bright map, we got Brian. Brian outside. Brian, okay. Takun, we got Steven. There we go. Good to see you, man. Got you guys on board.
Finally. Well, here, I'm going to speak to Josh's mom because I think she's the most important person in the room. She's done a great job, right? Round of applause, Josh's mom. I came to CannaGather about 2.5 years ago, a much smaller crowd. I was sitting in the corner, didn't know what to say. But I've seen this thing grow into a true community, and it's all down to you and Kim and the rest of the team, and I think you guys have done a fabulous job. So thank you very much. So we are Tikkun Olam. Yes, we're the same Tikkun Olam from Israel. And I'm glad that Dr. Darner came up and spoke, because we've actually been doing these clinical trials for over 10 years in Israel. In fact, we have done a double-blind, placebo-controlled, randomized study in Crohn's disease. And we've shown that our strains that we are now bringing to the United States, our strain profiles are now in the United States. We're selling in California and in Florida, have shown in Crohn's disease to show a 90% improvement rate. In fact, 50% of our controlled group actually showed remission. These are small groups. More work needs to be done. Israel is a very small country, and we deal in very small samples. But now that we're in the United States, we hope to be doing this good work, I should say, in the local states that we're operating in. So if anyone is interested, we have a table outside. We are offering our products, as I said, in California and in Florida right now. And we hope to take it to other states very soon. Hopefully by 2020, we should be in about 10 different states, and we're looking for partners in all of the other states. There's now 33 states that now have medical cannabis rules and regulations, and we hope to bring it to all of these places. So if anyone's interested, we're outside, and we're happy to talk to you.
It's a pretty wild ride you've had. So, and thank you to your mom for encouraging him, even though you didn't agree with cannabis, you know. And part of the motivation was that we were actually the year prior looking to invest in the space. New York State opened the window to get a grower's license at the end of 2017, so we applied. We grew hemp on 4 acres last year, and we're hoping to go into about 22 acres this year. And here we are, almost a year later. So everything we do, we test it on the plant-based level, we test it on the extract-based level, and then we test the end product, the tinctures, to make sure we're completely compliant, what we're producing is safe, and is going to be effective. We're a family of companies. We're vertically integrated, and I wanted to mention Chris here, who's one of our strategic partners in the business, and he's around if anyone wants to chat with him about that. But thank you very much.
I keep this, right? This is okay. Next year. Now I know.
Thank you so much. Can everyone hear me? Okay, great. So my name is Joan Vollero. I'm the Senior Policy Advisor in the Manhattan DA's office, and I'm honored tonight to accept this award on Manhattan DA Cy Vance's behalf. So my remarks are going to take you down a sec, and then hopefully they lift you back up. But in Manhattan in 2017, New Yorkers of color were arrested for marijuana at a rate of 15 to 1. Sure. So I'm just going to repeat that because it's a really important statistic. In Manhattan in 2017, New Yorkers of color were arrested at a rate of 15 times to 1 for marijuana. And that we recognize that absolutely had to change. DA Vance said that the dual mission of the Manhattan DA's office is a safer New York and a more equal justice system. and the continued prosecution of predominantly Black and brown New Yorkers for smoking marijuana serves neither purpose and erodes trust in our office. As an advisor, I was fortunate enough to be on the team that developed our decline to prosecute marijuana policy. While numerous studies have been done on marijuana legalization, we couldn't find one that was actually useful or applicable to a big city DA's office, so we decided to conduct one ourselves. The findings can be found online on our website. We conducted a review of jurisdictions where marijuana is no longer prosecuted. That included at the time California, Colorado, Massachusetts, Nevada, Oregon, Washington, D.C., and Washington State. And I want to give you an example of what happened in Colorado. Colorado in particular went above and beyond to help a prosecutor's office wrap our heads around this issue. In Denver, a member of the DA's office gave my colleague and I a tour of a dispensary run by a former DEA agent who's now in charge of the elaborate security operation in that facility. And it struck me that if a federal drug enforcement agent sees this line of work as a viable secondary career, so too could all of the local law enforcement leaders in New York who are currently in opposition. The sky has not fallen in Colorado, and they might come around if they also heard someone like that speak. Sorry. Marijuana prosecutions, as everyone knows, carry multiple collateral consequences. They affect jobs, housing, college applications, obviously lead to deportation. These consequences are simply not proportional to the conduct, especially when cops could just as easily give someone a ticket, just as they do for drinking in public. So since August, we've declined to prosecute these offenses. I'm happy to report that our marijuana prosecutions have declined by 99%, which is great news. And we expect that by this August, 1 year into our policy, we will have spared 5,500 New Yorkers from unnecessary prosecution just in Manhattan. And all the while, Manhattan is as safe as it's ever been. So we're now confronted with the question, what do we do about New Yorkers who still experience the consequences of an old marijuana arrest? In September, DA Vance personally stood up in court and moved to dismiss and seal virtually every open marijuana case we had, nearly 3,000 cases, the earliest dating back to 1978. Earlier this month, he filed a class action lawsuit that you may have read about in the papers, asking the court to proactively seal all eligible previous convictions for marijuana. We wish we could snap our fingers and erase these convictions, but there's simply no easy legal mechanism for doing so. At the same time, DA Vance is ramping up his advocacy in Albany, calling on New York to legalize and regulate marijuana before the end of the current legislative session. This shouldn't be up to DAs alone. We need our legislature to do justice in all 62 counties in New York State. So on behalf of DA Vance, I just want to thank you for your continued advocacy in this space. And in particular, I want to thank Josh and the CannaGather team. So thank you so much.
Hi, Danny. Cool. Thank you. Thanks, Danny Frost, for organizing that as well. DA Gonzalez in Brooklyn has been doing similarly commendable efforts, so kudos to him. And Jumane at the city council level, now as public advocate, has been doing some incredible things at the city level. So major thank you to all three of these guys for what they've been doing. And thank you, Joan, for coming and representing the DA's office. Quick shout out, Start Smart. The Start Smart campaign has really been leading the charge from an advocacy and grassroots organization standpoint to push forward sensible cannabis legalization. So I want to give a shout out to Cassandra Frederic, Melissa Moore from DPA. Round of applause for them. And then from Empire State Normal, Doug Green. I'd like to invite him up here if he's, here? Is Doug here? Maybe Doug is, oh, there he is. Doug's here. So as I've said before, Doug is probably the most knowledgeable person about cannabis law in New York State. So thank you, Doug, for all that you do as a He's a wise man and champion and advocate.
Thank you. So we had a tradition in my family for my birthday. We instead of doing all the candles for each birthday, we'd kind of do past, present, and future. Past, Ethan Nadelman unfortunately has left the building, but I remember when he was a professor at Princeton, and it was just a bunch of wonky white guys meeting at the Lowe's L'Enfant Plaza Hotel in Washington, D.C. That's what the movement was like back then, 30 years ago. And Dana Beal, who is usually at these things, but I don't think is here tonight, unfortunately. It really kind of all began with them. And my family, of course, especially my mom, Sherry, my sister, Stephanie, two amazing women who unfortunately are not getting the safe access to medical cannabis they need. Present, Josh, Kim, Tom, the wonderful supporting staff of CannaGather, my board of directors who are all over there. I wish I had the time to give them each a shout out because they are amazing, wonderful people. And it's been such a pleasure to build the team I've built with them. And future, are Axel and Jason still out? They're still outside. I know I saw them before. You know, unfortunately, there's a lot of conflict and tension within the movement. There's, you know, being so close to this, you see a lot of things that aren't so pretty. And a lot of people have thrown a lot of shade at Governor Cuomo. And Governor Cuomo has not always done what I think is the right thing in terms of especially messaging around this issue, unfortunately. But I do have to say that Jason and Axel and that team are some of the smartest, most passionate, committed people I've met inside or outside the movement. They are really amazing, and I really trust them to do the right thing as we go forward with legalization in New York. I don't know what else I can say. I guess this means that we're being effectual. We were recently called ineffectual, which kind of amused me because people, we don't do a great job necessarily of selling ourselves, and people kind of don't know the level of access we've achieved in working this fight. Thank you all for being here, and just one more thing. Raise your hand if you've contacted your legislators about this issue. That's not enough. Okay, see, like, my family wasn't crazy wealthy, but they were wealthy enough where basically I could have gone to any school that I wanted to go to, and you know, I graduated debt-free from college and all that. Of course, this is many, many years ago when it was easier to do that, but I really, really hate entitlement. I loathe entitlement. And a lot of times I go to these events and I feel like people are just kind of coasting and don't really get it. You know, I've never been in jeopardy. I'm like a middle-aged white legal professional, you know, from the suburbs. I've never really been in danger of consequences from cannabis use. I think I've been stopped and frisked twice, once in DC, once in New York, never arrested. But I know what goes on, and I know that all over the state there are black people and there are white people too, a lot of white people upstate, which isn't being talked about, who are getting arrested for this. And so I've actually said to people, if you're not going to get in touch with your legislators about this, I don't want to smoke with you. I don't want to be your friend on Facebook. And that's really how I feel because, you know, I'm not doing this work so you can coast along on your privilege. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we take a photo? Can we take a photo? Doug, photo? Photo. Yeah. We got one already?
I thought so.
I don't remember. Cool. Thank you. Amen. We heard from Mary. I saw Tanya. There she is.
Hi, everybody. Thank you. Hi. My name is Tanya. I'm the New York City market leader for Women Grow. Thank God the room's kind of cleared out because there's a lot of testosterone in the room and I got a little nervous. I was like, oh my goodness. So a lot of estrogen love. I appreciate it. Women Grow is a national organization that encourages women to be entrepreneurs, business leaders, and advocates in the space. I run the New York City market. We do an event every month to really just build a community. That's the biggest thing about Women Grow is to build a community. So as different as we are from CannaGather, we're exactly the same. We have a love of the plant. We have a love of this community and the people in it. And we just want to see everyone grow. Pardon the pun. Thank you so much.
It's all about the puns. Why would we do it if not for the wordplay? Quick heads up, we have an event in Denver tomorrow, in Santa Monica on the 7th. Connecticut's coming up on the 14th, and DC on the 25th, if you're going to be in any of those spots. Our next CannaGather in New York is with Sally Nichols. It's the power of the brand. As you know, she's the president of Bloom Farms. It's going to be awesome, back at Galvanize.